Alright, um, so I just wanted to do a video regarding something that just happened that my family and I just went through. It's called postnatal psychosis. Correction, it's called postpartum psychosis. One in, I think it was, two out of 1,000, so 1 in 500 pregnancies, the woman gets this. So there's basically post-birth or postnatal depression. There's postnatal baby blues, they call it. There's postnatal um, frustration, just different things because of all the hormones and just the stress of having a baby, and then the different life changes that you have to go through. And adjustment period can be overwhelming. So there's a series of events and emotions and chemicals that can throw women off. So, in my wife and I's case, um, ap- after about 2 weeks of having the baby, she got progressively out of touch with reality. Um, she was like getting these kind of whimsical, creative ideas that were completely unrealistic being produced in her subconscious mind, and then she felt they were very realistic. So, in other words, it was almost as if she lost discernment to be able to judge realistic from dreams. And my theory is that over those 2 weeks, she didn't get good sleep because she was trying to take care of the newborn night and day, plus up all day with the 1.5-year-old. And so I would say she was averaging like an hour and a half of sleep per night for 2 weeks. So what I believe happens is all the stress, all the frustration, all the life changes, all the hormonal imbalances, um, all these different things that happen with a pregnancy can sometimes create the perfect storm to just make you feel overwhelmed to the point where you can't really sleep. You get insomnia. And then the insomnia um, robs your mind of that time to get deep sleep where your mind organizes its thoughts. It dreams, so the subconscious can express itself through creative dreams. And then when you wake up and are experiencing the world in reality, you don't have these dream thoughts trying to enter into reality. They stay in dreamland. And I believe that after severe sleep deprivation, dreamland and reality start to merge, and it's almost like you're sleeping while you're awake. And so things that would normally be relegated to dreams start to merge in with your reality. And so, anyways, after about 2 weeks of this, my wife started getting really bad with her lack of ability to differentiate from dreams and reality. So, like, she was just living in a dream as she was awake. And she was just seeing things and saying weird, really weird stuff. And, like, for example, I came upstairs to talk to her, and she said, "Oh my goodness, what's wrong? Something seems off." And I said, "Nothing's wrong." And she said, "Did someone die? Did you die?" And I said, "No, I didn't die. I'm standing right in front of you." And she said, "Did I die?" And I was like, "No, you're talking to me, standing in front of me." And so it's like if somebody had a good touch with reality, they would know that if they're talking to somebody, that person's not dead. And if they are speaking with someone, they are not dead. But when you're very confused between a dream state and an awake state, those types of differentiations are unclear. Because I think you could technically be dead in a dream and seeing conversations people are having, and and you're more the narrator of the dream. Something like that is what maybe she thought she was in some type of dream. So, anyways, that's just one example. I don't need to go through them all, but she accused family members of having affairs with one another. She accused various family members of sexually abusing the 1-year-old baby, which obviously nobody did. But it just was like I said, these like subconscious fears, protection instincts, all these things kicking in. What would be the worst case scenario? And then I think that's real. So anything you could think is the worst case scenario, you imagine it as being actually happening. And then she also like accused people of practicing witchcraft, and nobody knows anything about how to practice witchcraft. I mean, I know a little bit about it just from like Harry Potter or like different like Christian ministries that talk about why witchcraft is bad and what people do when they get into that and how we need to pray for people who are stuck in that stuff. You know, that type of thing. But as far as like getting into that, like full blown, no, not at all. So anyways, uh, when I got concerned, especially doing some research online and hearing that risk of suicide is 5% for people with this condition of post-birth psychosis. Risk of killing the baby, the newborn, is 5% for people with this condition. That's 1 in 20. That's very high. It's 1 in 10 if you combine those two, the 5% of each. That would be 10% chance of doing one of the two. So 1 in 10 chances? Nah, that's getting scary for me. So I started calling around family. I asked everybody I know, that's like close friends and family, what do they think I should do? And the consensus that was formed is to bring her to the ER. And also her doctor did say that as well. So that's her or no, her OBGYN doctor that does the delivery of the baby. We called them their office as well. They said bring her to the ER. So we brought her to a ER of a hospital that has a mental health wing, and they checked her in, they took her in. I had to tell them everything that she'd said that was off and blah blah blah. And so basically they give them their talk therapy and antipsychotic medication. And we got Seroquel, which is also called quetiapine. It's a strong tranquilizer. It's part of the second generation of these antipsychotic medications. The first generation was invented in the 50s. Some guy was actually trying to create a tranquilizer that knocks people out for surgery. And then allegedly they were like, huh, this can actually help people with mental health issues. So then they started using it for that. And then they created maybe a slight variation of it with a bunch of derivatives, I believe in the 80s, and we're using a lot of that stuff today. Now, the problem with these things is they are loaded with side effects. And so my wife did 1 week in the hospital. These things gave her good sleep because they knock you out. So they're like a super strong sleeping pill and they calm down your body. So the racing thoughts, the stress, everything tones down and you get better. Especially if you are mentally strong in general, if you're spiritually strong, if you have a good support system, these things can all help. Because when I say spiritually strong, when you're in this unsober-minded, kind of messed up state and confusion, demons can talk to you. Now, I know that secular teachers on the topic of schizophrenia or psychosis will mock and laugh at that. But the Bible says, my sheep will know my voice, and the strangers they will not follow. So we have the shepherd's voice, and we have the stranger's voice. This is biblical. You can hear the stranger's voice. That's Satan and his minions, is represented by the stranger. And then the shepherd's voice is God's voice. So you're going to hear God's voice and the stranger's voice throughout your life. How much more when your mind is really compromised? God's going to be trying to reach you, to encourage you, get you through a hard time. So he's going to be speaking to you. And then demons are going to be speaking to you as well because they're trying to take advantage of you at your weak point, mentally weak, not able to fight, reason, rebuke thoughts. You're just kind of like hazy and you're just letting them bombard you with their poisonous suggestions and confusions. They're going to try to add on to it. And I believe that. So it really helps if you have a lot of strong spiritual friends and family that can pray with you, that can really help pull you through. Also, reading the Bible and worshiping God can really help to clear a lot of that away, and that'll make it a lot easier. So then you're just dealing with chemical and kind of dreamy thoughts, but you're not having demons also trying to bombard you, making everything way worse. So we had that going for us, which is why I believe my wife got out of the mental facility in only a week. That's really good. And then from there, I did a bunch of research on this quetiapine, this Seroquel, this tranquilizer antipsychotic drug that they had her on in there. And I determined that this stuff is bad, bad news. And I decided that um, I don't want her to become severely dependent on it, sleep dependent on it, can't sleep without it, can't function without it. I don't want her to get more and more and more hooked. And all the side effects that can become permanent side effects, I didn't want that for her. So I figured, you know what? We've got a loving family. We've got a strong support network. She's doing much better. She got good sleep. Let's start weaning right away. Let's start weaning her off this stuff. And that's what we did. Um, Now I want to talk about the risks, which I wrote down for my research. Um, there is increase. This is risk of if you stay on the stuff. Increased risk of stroke, tremors, significant weight gain, sedation, gastrointestinal problems, permanent drooling, permanent involuntary movements, permanent reduction in intelligence, permanent loss of balance and dizziness, permanent major reduction in motor skills and eye-hand coordination, brittle bones, addiction, loss of all emotions, loss of all motivation for life, severe memory loss, hearing voices, increased risk of self-harm, panic attacks, formation of too many dopamine receptors in frontal cortex due to it blocking them, so you are way more prone to psychosis forever. Unable to sleep when you go off them, sleep dependency on them, extreme anger, rage, and loss of self-control when you go off it, and withdrawals. Makes people lethargic and bedridden. If you stop taking it, you have withdrawals like a heroin addict. Makes people suicidal, can make you go blind. So these are all the various um, severe side effects for staying on it. And I thought, you know what? Sure, my wife is potentially going to have trouble sleeping. Sure, my wife is going to maybe have times where she's a little bit confused. She'll need to have an adult that cares about her with her, potentially, if she starts slipping back into that, to explain things to her lovingly, patiently, get her back on track if she's starting to get a little confused. Just like you would do with your grandpa at the nursing home. You would just need somebody to explain things if they're getting confused. And so, yeah, we could go through that. Fortunately for us, she never got violent during that time. So I wasn't really concerned with that aspect. Plus, my faith in God had me believing God will protect and preserve my home, the health of everyone, and get us through this in one piece. So that played a role. I like putting things into God's hands. Not to the point where I'm putting God to the test, where now I'm being a fool, but I didn't see it as a fool because I saw all these side effects and I had to make a informed decision. I chose to wean off. Plus, I knew that I personally, if it's needed, can physically restrain her if she did become violent. I'm physically capable of that because I'm a lot stronger than my wife. Um, that's worst case scenario, obviously. Most likely, what does the Bible say? Um, a calm response turns away wrath. If my wife were to become very, very angry, if I stayed calm, that could already solve it. So I would be able to spiritually put a covering on her as someone who obeys the Lord and seeks the Lord with all of his heart. And I would also be able to be patient and loving with her. And I just felt that as a team, my wife and I could get through it. And we did. So we ended up originally taking on a really hardcore weaning schedule, which I created for her, which would be a 5-day weaning. But by around day 2 or 3, word got out of what we were doing, and some family members freaked out and said, no, she needs to stay on these drugs for 6 months at least, and possibly for a year or two, just to play it safe. But what they're not realizing is that that is plenty of time to get her completely addicted and start letting in some of these long-term side effects, which would be horrible. That means she'd have to live with possibly drooling for the rest of her life. Yeah, that'll look great at a job interview. You're drooling and staring off in space. Like, no, I don't want a zombie wife. I want her to live to her fullest potential. And I'm willing to take a little bit more risk of, I don't know, her being confused once in a while and maybe having thoughts that are not her own being whispered by a demon or whatever. We'll pray out that stuff. We'll get through it spiritually. So anyways, we were about on day 3 of the weaning process, and then some family and friends were getting freaked out about the weaning. They didn't think we should stop the medication at all. So I said, you know what, how about I compromise? We'll bump it up to a 2-week wean. Now a 2-week wean would be fine for like a 6-month stay on this drugs. I felt that's way overkill to stretch out the wean for a whole 2 weeks. She'd only been on the drug for 6 days. So I figured 5 days get off it should be fine. But we did do a 2-week wean. So it ended up working out great. Now, there are withdrawal symptoms, which she did go through, especially like the day after a big stair step down on the weaning step. So like, let's say she went from 100 milligrams at night to 75 at night to 40 at night. Going from 75 to 40, that's a big jump of 35 milligrams, like a 30% jump. She, on the first day she did that, would experience a lot of withdrawal symptoms the following day. So here's the list of those symptoms: nausea, vomiting, insomnia, dizziness, excessive sweating, increased heart rate, abdominal pain, diarrhea, muscle rigidity, irritability, agitation, and restlessness. Unfortunately, almost all of those did hit except insomnia. We were very fortunate that she was able to sleep through this weaning process. That I believe was critical. And I made sure all the lights were off. I slept next to her, even though I was on a different sleep schedule. I just forced myself to sleep when she slept, because she feels safer when I'm next to her. Um, and also, we could turn all the lights off that way. She doesn't need a nightlight. I mean, she's a little bit of baby in that area. She needs to get through that. Um, yeah, we should not be afraid of the dark when we're adults. Anyways, she would admit to that. I'm not trying to be harsh here. I'm just saying. Okay. So I slept next to her. That gave her comfort. I prayed with her a lot. I walked her through. She had like one panic attack, like maybe the second or third day of the weaning. She was really, really freaking out, rocking back and forth. As I talked to her, just elevated heart rate, sweating. A lot of that could have been tied into the withdrawal symptoms: excessive sweating, increased heart rate, and then add into that just like having a lot of people come over that night. It just got her a little overwhelmed. Um, and then just the anxiety was starting to come back as the medication was coming down. And just somehow she had a panic attack, but it only happened the one time. Then she was just very anxious and stressed out in general, and kind of social anxiety was something she struggled with over the first like 5 or 6 days of this process. But that completely went away eventually, so that's good. So these are all things just to look out for. So anyways, I'm going to go through specifically what our weaning looked like. Um, Alright, so day 0 is at the hospital. She had 100 milligrams at night, 25 milligrams at day. That was her dose that they sent her home with, and that's what she was prescribed to be on for like 6 months. So obviously, we wanted to start weaning right away when I learned about all these horrible side effects. And um, I saw a bunch of YouTube videos and I saw a bunch of testimonies of people explaining the nightmares they had with this drug. And I wanted her off as soon as possible. Um, so we jumped from 100 milligrams night, 25 milligrams day to on day one at home, we did 75 milligrams night, 25 milligrams day. So we just knocked off 25. Um, then we ended up on days 2 through 8 at home, doing 40 milligrams at night, 10 milligrams by day. And then day 9 through 10 at home, we did 25 milligrams night, 0 milligrams day. Day 11, we did 10 milligrams night. And then day 12 we were fully off. No, none more. And we were going to do like 14 days, but we stopped the 10 milligrams at night after only doing that one night. We were going to do that for a few more nights, but or a couple more nights. But my wife just got really motivated to get back to breastfeeding because our newborn was not doing too well with her formula powder. And we couldn't even buy the regular formula. It's all sold out at every store locally. So we had to go with powder formula, and it was giving the baby constipation. So she really wanted to get back to breastfeeding. And so that's why we ended up just doing a 11-day wean. So close to 2-week wean. Actually, it's a little closer to a week and a half. Anyways, so that was our whole wean, and it was a massive success. My wife's completely back to normal, and it's just a good success story. Now, she's supposed to be still on her medications for 6 months, which would have her deep into all these side effects, possibly for life, completely hooked, probably insomnia, maybe for months afterwards. She'd have to start taking heavy duty sleeping pills just to compensate. I mean, all kinds of things. There's no telling. And then what they do is once you start having side effects for the main drug you're on, they start prescribing you other drugs to treat the side effects of the original drug. Now you're on a whole drug cocktail. And the problem with these drugs, nobody really knows what the heck they're doing. You can study them in trials and you can see results. But the bottom line is people are just mixing a bunch of chemicals together, usually petroleum-based products, and it's toxic to the body. That's why there's all these side effects. And so, yeah, it does a job, but are you willing to now throw away your health for the rest of your life just to treat symptoms without treating the root cause, which in this case would be lack of sleep and super high anxiety? No, you need to address the anxiety and you need to address the lack of sleep. You need to make certain lifestyle changes, and you also probably need to talk and vent to someone about everything you're going through and all the stress you're in. You need to pray about it. There's spiritual, mental, and physical needs that all need to be met to address the underlying cause, not just dump poisonous medications onto the situation which hide the symptoms but don't address the root causes. So that's why I really didn't like it. Plus, like I said, the huge number of complications later in life, the increased risk of things like stroke. No, I don't want to destroy my wife's life just so that I can selfishly have her acting a little bit more normal, although very tranquilized and kind of out of it. So, no, it's not worth that. The pills to me were a greater risk than her just going through, you know, a little bit of delusional, paranoid state of mind for a while. I'd rather have that than these pills which destroy her life and destroy her mind. So, yeah, we got off it, and now she's already back to breastfeeding. It's great. And hopefully there will be no long-term effects. And so I stand by my decision, and Right now, the hospital assigned a therapist and a psychiatrist for her to do follow up with. We're probably not going to do that because all they are going to say is get back on your meds, probably. Now, here's a funny thing. If she went back to see those psychiatrists and therapists, whatever, and she said, I'm doing so well, they would be like, great, the meds are working. We'll keep you on the dosage you're on then. If she said, I'm doing horrible and here's why, they would be like, oh, we'll just increase your meds. So, what is the mechanism where they would lower the meds? If you say I'm doing great, they'd be like, wow, the meds are working. We'll keep you on them. What would she need to say for them to say, oh, great, we're taking you off the meds? Nothing. Especially when there's so much corruption with big pharma trying to push sales. I mean, if you guys don't know about that, look into it. They've got all kinds of dirt. It's all about money with them. Money is the root of all kinds of evil. Okay, so just know that. And so you need to be very careful when you deal with pharmaceuticals. And I think that they did serve a purpose in that they helped her to get sleep while she was at the hospital, but um, long-term usage you want to avoid like the plague because they are a plague. I mean, these things are not designed for, nor can they be designed for long-term use in a safe, effective manner that does not put you at high risk of destroying your whole life, your body and your mind. So no, that's just a bad solution, and so that's how I think about it all. That's the research I found. That's the decisions I made. That's how we got through this as a family. And if she gets psychosis again, we may go through the same exact steps we took this time. So that's why I wanted to make this video, to encourage people going through this, show a success story, what steps were taken, and how it all played out in the timelines of everything and whatever. But I can't underestimate the spiritual side of it, that really my wife and I praying together sometimes for hours, opening up our heart to God. We had some really good times where we were both in tears, very touched, emotionally healing took place. Um, God is the ultimate healer, and so that's a very important part of recovering. Um, the mind, which is what's being attacked in this type of event with psychosis, the mind is the issue. The mind is connected to the spirit and the heart. And so the spirit connects us to God. You need to combine God through the spirit to heal the mind and the heart. And there's undeniably massive connections with all of that. And so that's what we did. We gave her spiritual healing just by worshiping God, thanking God, focusing on the blessings from God, not just focusing on here's what's stressful, well, what about this, how is this going to work out. We cast our cares on God. He's a big boy, he can handle it for us. Everything's in his hands. We don't have to worry about tomorrow. There's enough cares today. If God takes care of the birds and the lilies of the field, he can certainly take care of us, who he loves. Okay? So we put our cares in his hands. We trust God, and he is our healer. He doesn't give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and a sound mind. So a sound mind is what we're after here. And not to be afraid just because you're going through psychosis. And it's just so good just to, with thanksgiving, resist anxiety by praying, making your requests known to God, and then his peace comes and it guards your heart and mind. And that's what we did. We prayed through it. We did a lot of praying together. And we also played worship music and some sermons and stuff. And we sang to God together out loud. And we were both in tears just because there's some really powerful anointed worship music we were listening to. And that's really the way to get through this from a spiritual side of things, and reading the Bible as well. She was reading a lot of the book of Psalms. She said that helped her a lot. So I highly recommend anybody going through this to read the book of Psalms, because David went through a lot of struggles, and he is very poetic in the way that he trusted in God through the midst of his struggles. And it's a very encouraging book of the Bible for that type of scenario. So, anyways, um, that's our story with this, and I hope that could encourage somebody and help someone. Alright, peace out. Alright, so editor's note, this is an update. This is 6 months after the filming of that original take. There was no relapse. I still stand by the decision I made with my wife. And she did great. She's not had any issues since. And we're still planning to have future kids, although that's up to God. We'll see what happens. But we're open to it. And we're not going to be worried about that. Even though she's much more highly likely to get postpartum psychosis again. And we had several members of friends and family very adamantly against her getting off the Seroquel quetiapine, horrible, toxic, antipsychotic drug that they had prescribed to her. I think she had like a 6-month, maybe even a 1-year prescription, and they wanted her on that just forever. We didn't even do the follow-up doctor visits. I think we just canceled those because we would have to admit we went off the meds, so we just skipped that. She did see a therapist and still is seeing a therapist. I don't know if that's helping or not, but she's just doing that because somebody offered who she knows, who is a professional therapist. And actually my wife is going to school to be a therapist as well, so she knows other therapists and can get free therapy from her friends in that field. So we had a lot of pressure to try to put her back on the meds, but I chose to go against that group, which caused a lot of drama and controversy, but my decision ended up panning out just fine. And in my opinion, it was the best long-term decision because these medications can cause long-term damage. Some people were counter-arguing that coming off the medication before the doctors tell you to come off, that can create long-term damage. I'm not buying that at all. I think that these meds are far more dangerous than whatever naturally occurring psychosis after having a baby may happen. The meds are far more dangerous than anything natural that can happen, in my opinion. And that's based on the research. All of these horrible side effects, all of these case-by-case testimonials I've gone through. I spent a couple days researching how horrible these drugs are, how they destroy lives, and a lot of people choose to get off them. In fact, there's a postpartum psychosis video done by the Soft White Underbelly, a really famous YouTube channel. I think that's what it's called. Let's see. Yeah, Soft White Underbelly. They did a psychosis video. Yeah, postpartum psychosis, victim and husband, Gabby and Sam. Here it is. Right here.
Alright.
And they too got her off the meds quickly. She did her research. You can tell they're both big researchers, very intelligent couple. She got off those meds ASAP. So she knew what's up. And when I did the research, I was horrified. I'm like, I gotta get my wife off this immediately. I'd rather have her take heroin, quite frankly. That's how dangerous these meds are. I'd rather have her doing meth. That's how horrible these antipsychotic drugs are. It's just awful. So anyways, the other huge advantage is that formula crisis is still going on. We're 6 months later. Actually, President Biden had to do an executive order to pull emergency food storage out of storage and send it to the infant formula companies to put out more formula because there's a nationwide formula shortage for baby formula. And so it was very expensive and very difficult to get formula. You had to order it from Amazon, and it was hiked up in price and all this stuff. And for all the stores just had weird little off-brand formula and whatever. They didn't have the main stuff that the hospitals recommend when you get your baby out of the hospital or whatever. So we were just struggling to find formula. And like I said, the powder formula was all we could find, and that caused constipation. We were having issues with the newborn. And so by getting her off the meds, we were able to do breastfeeding again. We kept her pumping even while she was on the meds in order to keep the breast milk flowing. And we even had her breast pump sent to the psych wing of the emergency room hospital place where she was being kept during her time there when we committed her. She was still breast pumping there. I really pushed that upon her. Every time we talked, I made sure to tell the nurses as well to keep that going, because once you stop breast pumping, that's it. Your milk's done. You have to keep that flow going. And so because we kept it going and got her off the meds, she's been able to breastfeed the last 6 months. And the baby's been flourishing with the fresh, natural breast milk, which is the ideal. So that's just a side benefit. It was a convenience thing later on, as well as benefits the baby's overall health and saves a lot of money. So those are all side perks, but the long-term health of my wife far and away exceeds all the side perks that I mentioned. And so any type of long-term damage from that toxic drug was the main thing we wanted to avoid. It wasn't like, oh, who cares about the drug's damage or whatever, I just want free breast milk to save money. That's not what my thought process was at all. That was more of a side consideration.